if we're going to fix things, it's going to have to be us here at the
Us.
Grassroots.
Exactly. Yes.
We are
Yeah.
the people that
It
we have to
is
rely on.
really. It is up to us. And I think that's one of the beauties of Audacity, because that's how it's basically what we're talking about, how it's grown. Because you have an idea, okay, make it happen. Do whatever you have to do to make it happen. And that's what's worked.
Yeah, I'm the voice of Audacity.
I am the voice of Audacity.
I am the voice of Audacity.
Local voices, real impact, right now. Audacity, creative action together.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lynn. Here we are. We have this day, we have this time.
You know, a lot of us know you, I know your story, but a lot of people who watch us don't have any idea who you are. Who is James Cook? How did you get to come to where you are now?
Who is James Cook?
Yeah,
who
who
is
is
Lynn Donovan?
James Cook?
Who is anybody? Well, okay. So I have training as a sociologist. I have a PhD from the University of Arizona in sociology, and I spent 30 years as a sociologist until my effective date of resignation as a tenured professor of sociology was the day after inauguration of Trump's second.
Well, I remember celebrating your tenure when you got it. And then, wow, things kind of unraveled
Yeah.
from there.
Well, but we saw, those of us who were paying attention, we saw the writing
Yeah.
on the wall, which
Yeah.
is that social sciences in particular, empirical approaches that teach about how to measure reality and compare it to claims, not very popular in the moment. And so actually now I'm in my day job a manager of a charity thrift shop, and I use applied sociology all the time. But one of the things that I learned in my time as a sociologist is that when we ask who is somebody, that identity is really a set of role performances. So where a role might be as say a father, or as a student, or as a worker, as a friend. These are all things that we try to do. And so some of the identity that I bring in here is from sociology. And my PhD in sociology was centered in two areas, one of which is social network analysis, the study of patterns of interaction of individuals and how the way that people interact with one another affects their experience. And the second is in political sociology, which is the study of how groups and institutions work together to create policies, policy understandings, political realities, and that includes both what happens in government and then also what happens in non-governmental zones.
Well, it really strikes me how, without knowing where you would be all these years later, when you chose those topics of concentration in your doctorate, how perfectly suited that foundation is for what you're doing now.
We each bring whatever experience we have to the table, and I think there are a lot of perfect ways for people to participate, and there's a lot of different kinds of leadership, but this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I studied under David Snow, who looked at patterns of religious movements and political movements and how recruitment worked, and also Doug McAdam, who studied Freedom Summer, which was an example of high risk activism in which you ask the question, who is it that signs up for this Freedom Summer experience? White, usually comfortable college students heading down to the South to help with voter registration at a time when that was dangerous, and some folks were killed as a result. And then who actually follows through and does that? So I'd had some of that academic experience, but had also been involved in social movements ever since I was, about 18 years old. And I'm not 18 anymore. So it's been a while. The first
Yeah.
social movement action I went to was for Sane Freeze in Cleveland, Ohio. And that was a movement to limit the severity and the spread, the proliferation of nuclear weapons. And a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then.
Yeah.
But so I've been involved in social movements for a long time, and I'd studied them, and that affects sort of how I thought of the moment when we saw Donald Trump winning a second term and making all kinds of very specific promises about what he was going to do. So,
But I met you around his first term,
that's right.
and the loosely connected Indivisible. We really were a renegade member of Indivisible, that group.
That's right.
But that's where I met you. I have no recollection of how I found my way to that group. Not a glimmer of a recollection. But there you were, and then Sarah Holland, and what a dynamic, small but dynamic organization that turned out to be. And I look back at how excited we were we'd have 20 people in front of a courthouse. We were there every Tuesday, 5 o'clock, but never big crowds. 20 was a big deal. Yes. And then we did the march from Thomaston, and that was, 275 or something like that. And we thought that was fantastic,
Yeah, the numbers have been a lot larger this time around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
How much has changed?
But it started right after inauguration with a heck of a lot of silence. So really for a few months. I remember the day after.
You're talking about second one or
yes,
first?
with the second term. There was a lot of folks who said, I'm not ready yet. I'm not even ready to confront the second Trump administration. I know that those of us who were responding to the first one, once we got past the January 6th moment, we felt like, okay, our work is done here. We can dissolve.
And it dissolved. It did dissolve.
We did. But knowing that we had a much more difficult time in the second administration coming forward, although I don't think we even anticipated how bad it was going to be, the first reaction was a lot of reluctance. So eventually, after about a month, I was able to, I think I used Facebook, to basically make a call locally to folks who said they would be willing to meet around a kitchen table.
Well,
And
I reached
know
out
you were part
to
of
you.
that group.
Yes, I was, and I thought it was closer to the election than a month. I don't know for sure. But I remember thinking, I can't even breathe here without help. I think at this point, I can't get through this alone. I wonder what James is doing, and reached out to you to say, can we get a group of people together? And you said, oh, you're on the list, come Thursday night at whatever time it was. And I think there were like 9 of us that first time, and then 15 the next week. And here we are.
And here we are. But the first few meetings, the first 3 or 4 meetings were right in around my dining room table. And,
yes,
and,
they were.
And we only
with
went
sheets
public
on
when
your
we,
walls. And
yes, and we had
all
sheets on
this
the walls.
Wow, did we brainstorm?
We sure did. And one of the pieces of difficulty we had was trying to find points of commonality. So one of the first questions was, well, what's the most important issue here? And we just went around this group of about 9 folks in that first meeting. And
I know
everybody had a different issue. Yeah.
Everybody was different.
So we thought, okay, well, we haven't found our common point. Let's try that again. We met again, and we still couldn't find a common point. And at least one clear vision that says, this is the top issue. It is the most important thing. We all agree to work on this. And eventually that became a feature. And it was so frustrating that for a brief period I thought, well, we're just going to have to we're just going to have to call this off, this idea of organizing, until we got to a realization that we didn't have to agree on an ordering list of from top to bottom of what
That was,
our
it
priorities
could
were.
be inclusive of everybody.
That it could be inclusive of a wide variety, and
Right.
and then in January, and then our through which was when we had our first public "Everyone is Welcome" meeting. That came through again, but we realized that we had three things that we could be for, three things that we agreed that we could stand against, and these are very broad, and then one commitment in approach. And so those are the three things that we were for, were an inclusive democracy, equity, and freedom.
Freedom.
And
Well,
then
didn't
the
we come
ABC
up
that
with
we were
a
against,
name?
authoritarianism, bigotry, and
Right.
corruption. And then we agreed that to a commitment in our actions to nonviolent action. We couldn't agree on anything else. We
I
had
think we
lots of
did come
different
up with
ideas.
a name. I think we came up with a name from
We did.
around before the general meeting, because that, I remember being at your house and debating, how are we going to name this? And finally just went for, is it the Audacity or Audacity? And
And you still hear people say different things.
I
But
know.
it was an
Yeah.
idea of audacity.
But
or
that
the-
came,
the
that
aud-
came from the
the
kitchen table
audacity.
meetings.
It
Yeah.
did. It did.
Yep.
And then also a subtitle, which is describing our approach,
Right.
which is
Yes.
to be creative in action together. We're not
Yes.
alone. We're doing something. We're not just speaking. And we're going to be creative about it. And that's the genesis of the idea of the audacity. And it's grown since then.
Yeah. I think one of the ways that I've watched it grow, that you've instigated and followed through on, is somebody will come up with some great idea for something, and then you will invite them to take charge of that and make it happen. And how many subgroups have come from you doing that? Yeah.
Well, and that's how leadership has grown. So
Yeah.
it started around my dining room table with me convening people and saying, "Hey, we have to do something." But since then, leadership has really spread out according to the principle that leadership comes when somebody says, not only somebody should do something, but
I can,
I will organize this
Yeah.
thing. And within the boundaries that we set, the three things we're for, the three things we're against, and nonviolence, if there's any idea and there's enough people to say, yep, we're going to work on it, then it happens. So, so that's with that kind of approach that invites people to put a little bit of their own personal stake in it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of leaders in the Audacity now who all have that leadership authority because they are the people who have said, I will make this happen. I will work with other people to make this happen. And then they find ways
and then
to
they
do it.
do.
And
Yep.
that's wonderful. And you're one of those folks working on podcasts. So that's
Well,
great.
yes, but what happened for me was by April, my health began to just tank and went way downhill. And the No Kings was the first outdoor protest that I've been able to get to since way back, almost a year. So what I can do and what I've been doing has been very limited by or constrained by what I can do physically, but the podcast group is fun. And I went to that saying, well, I bring no technology, no experience. I like to talk. And this just seems like a good idea. And it leads me to say to you, all right, well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and I know you've been talking about it, is where do you see Audacity going? We've got, he's still in office. They are still running the show. So we have that to contend with, but that's not going to be forever. We hope. what happens with Audacity then? What's our job? Do we have a community commitment beyond being a protest organization? What's our role? We've got quite a dynamic group here.
We do.
What
So,
what can we do? Yeah.
so Lynn, I hear two questions in there. One
Oh,
is,
could be.
what does the Audacity do after Donald Trump is no longer president and his administration is no longer in power? And then there's
Right.
the question, what does the Audacity do next? And I think there's a lot of steps between where we
Yes.
are
And where that is. Oh,
and where
absolutely.
we end up, and most likely years. Especially if it happens under
Well,
a
I think my
democratic
concern
system,
is-
which is not guaranteed. But what we do eventually is a wonderful question that I haven't even really given myself time to
We'd
think
be
about what
ashamed to
happens
see it
after Trump.
dissolve. Yeah.
But one of the great things about what we say when what is it that the Audacity will do next is that there's no one person who's stage managing and saying, this is what will happen. Here's the single vision. You either take it or you leave it. What
Right.
Audacity does next is what people organizing under the Audacity who have the gumption to come up with something that fits within our bounds decides on and decides that they are willing to work on. So, for
And
instance,
can-
last
my
Saturday
opinion.
we had a brainstorming session where we said, okay, we've been bringing people to Chapman Park every Saturday in Rockland, Maine at noon, and that's been wonderful because it's accomplished the goal of demonstrating that here in this place, in this community, it is not true what they said at the beginning of the Trump administration, that there was no opposition, that it was scattered, that it was listless, that it had no energy, that it had no people,
We put
and
paid
that
to
Donald
that.
Trump just had a mandate that he was going to run with. And we said, hang on there. And we've
Yeah.
done work over a year of demonstrating that that is not the case. Not only is it not the case, but that we have as many as 2,300 people, which I think is our high water mark, that we've had, and regularly hundreds of people every week. And the counter protest, the opposition, the support for Donald Trump in Knox County, they've at most been able to get 4 people, and typically one person, and many weeks nobody at all, to even show up to demonstrate the support from their side. But now that numbers demonstration has worked, we're saying, what do we do next? And so we're currently in a period of brainstorming, and I have some ideas about what I would like to see happen next. But we went through about 5 sheets of paper in brainstorming a number of ideas of things that we could do. And we're going to find out through that same process we've always had, which is, okay, here's this idea. Who's going to
Yeah.
work on it?
Who's gonna
And
work
then we'll
on
see
it?
what rises to the top.
Because it would be a shame to see it when the impetus and the need that's driven it so far eases, to see it dissolve the way the last time around did.
Yes.
I don't
This-
think it will.
I don't think it will either, because one of the things that's happened very clearly is that there has been a sense of 2 things. The first is that it's really important for us to stop the destruction of democracy,
Yeah.
human rights, standards for encountering corruption, just the naked bigotry that is going on right now, and the use of power to hurt people who are the least powerful amongst us, and to stop that. But there has also been a strong strain in the work that we've done, which is to say, all right, if everything is being destroyed right now, our goal is not simply to go back to what was. But if we're going to wreck everything, if everything's going to be wrecked, we should do more. We should imagine what a society that we have in our minds that would be ideal would look like, and to try to embody
To get
that
there.
in the work
Yes.
that we do. And so we're
Yes.
growing a community for the future. We're growing a group of people who are connected to each other, who trust each other, who work together from many different towns, from many different backgrounds, both political and religious and moral and ethical and professional. And we've all gotten to know each other and make friendships and alliances with each other. I think that's going to be
I
there
think
for
that's
the
going to
long
hold.
run.
Yeah,
Yep.
I do too. And I think it will find an expression within the communities or that benefits the communities as well as the larger issues. Because I don't think we can, once this, I have great faith that this administration is going to topple of its own, if not the pressures that are coming to bear on it. But I don't think we can just try and build it back the way it was. The way it was has supported the underlying fascist development for decades. It has to be different. That didn't work. That brought us here.
Yes. I
We don't
think
want to get back to here 60
agree.
years from now.
one of the most there's so many competitors for this, so I'll just say one of the most depressing things we've seen over the last year and a bit. Of course, we expected Donald Trump to be mercenary and reckless in his destruction of many of the things about the United States that at least showed potential for creating a more just society. We expected him to go about wrecking that, but it was really disheartening to see leaders of institutions capitulate, just knuckle under, and be willing to throw human rights, human dignity, respect for difference, and rule of law right under the bus. Our media institutions, our educational institutions, our religious institutions, and our political institutions, including the Democratic Party, have really let us down and failed to stand up.
Yes, it's not just
to what
MAGA.
Trump is. Yeah,
It's not just MAGA who's let go, I think, of those
right.
who swore an oath
that's right.
in order to hold the positions that they have, that have abandoned that. And it seems to be about the power of money to a great degree.
Sure. I would be a little more sympathetic. I mean, there's some people who are clearly selling their souls. J.D. Vance, Pam Bondi, people who are willing to sell themselves to the highest
Yep.
bidder. But then there are leaders of nonprofit institutions, educational, religious
Yes.
institutions, and businesses and legal societies and all the like who have in their charters a fiduciary responsibility, for profit to make money, non-profit to promote the narrow mission of a particular organization. And they've made the calculation that in order for their organization, their single organization to survive,
They needed
that the
this and
leaders have to get along with Donald Trump and have to give in. But the problem with that is that they are ultimately betraying the very missions that their organizations are supposed
what
to
your
represent.
organization is built for.
So what does that leave us with? It leaves us with, we can't rely on churches to get it right. We can't rely on schools to stand up for us. We can't rely on political parties like the Democratic Party, certainly the Republican Party. We can't rely on political parties to do the work for us. We
We
can't
have to
even
do it.
just rely on electing the right people to office into a machine that is promoting itself and preserving itself to fix things. If we're going to fix things, it's going to have to be us here at the grassroots.
Exactly. Yes.
We are
Yeah.
the people that we have to rely on.
It is up to us.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the beauties of Audacity, because that's how it's basically what we're talking about, how it's grown. Because you have an idea, okay, make it happen. Do whatever you have to do to make it happen. And that's what's worked.
And that's the beautiful part of it is
Yep.
watching people come in. Often
Yep.
they'll come to an event, like they'll come to a demonstration, and then they'll come to a meeting and say, I want to do more.
Mm-hmm.
But really what someone ought to do is blank, blank, blank. And it's the
Right.
moment then when you say, well, would you like to be at the start of that?
Would
And
you be
typically
willing?
the immediate reaction is, oh no, I'm not the person. I'm not the person that would do that. I'm not good enough. I'm just this. I'm just that. I'm not enough. And what people I've seen over and over again have learned over time is, you know what? When the chips are down, you are enough. you can do a surprising amount. A single person with the gumption to say, you know what, I may not be perfect, but I'm going to give it a go. It's amazing what people have built in movements. We have groups that are about theater, about visual arts, about singing, in creativity. We have an infrastructure group. We have an outreach group that's working with legislatures and other organizations. We have a podcast group. All these different groups, civil disobedience group, which is
voter
getting underway.
registration, election
All of these
protection group.
are because people said, okay, I'll try. And then finding out they have so much leadership inside them. We have so many leaders because there are so many people who've stepped up and said, I'll try. I love that.
I do too. I think there are two things that come from this kind of growth. One is finding that when we step up, there is more to us, that we are so much more than we think we are. And that when we join together, 1 and 1 make about 4, not 2.
Yes.
And that's huge.
You invest in people, and people invest
And then
in
they
one
share.
another. It multiplies because you give someone else the ability
That's right.
and to do a little bit more, and they take that energy and they don't just digest it, they beam it back out to the world. And that's when you get just a little bit at the start, magnifying to so much. It's beautiful to watch happen.
Yes, exactly.
So we've maintained our independence, and that independence is organizational. It's also financial. We pass the bucket around. That's how we, anything that costs money, it's by people taking a couple of bucks of cash out of their own buckets locally. We are not funded by George Soros. But one of the things we've been able to fund is a website, and that is at AudacityCAT.com. We also have, if you use Blue Sky, we have an Audacity account there, and we also have an Audacity Facebook page. If you look up Audacity Maine Facebook or Audacity Maine Blue Sky or Audacity Maine website on any search engine in your browser, you'll find us. And the main thing to do is to join in one of those ways, and then you'll find out what's coming down the pike locally, and meetings and office hours and ways to join in the conversation, and not only to show up for events, but to help start to plan them too. If you are someone who wants to do that, find us, find our social media accounts, find our webpage, and you'll find ways to get involved.
YouTube, James?
We do have a YouTube channel,
That's what I
and
thought.
it includes
Yes.
our podcast. And one of the things, once you find our website, you'll find connections to all those other social media accounts as well. So that's a good place to go. AudacityCAT for Creative Action Together.com is the place to go to get started there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been quite a trip, James, starting your kitchen
It
table.
has. It has been.
Yeah, it's been so good. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn,
you.
for your time today.
All right, take care.
So long.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
If you're interested in learning more about Audacity, you can find us at www.audacitycat.com. We can also be found at Blue Sky, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you for listening.